Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's April. I'm so glad to have you here. Earlier this year, I decided that I wanted to take up knitting. I have all of these straight needles and all of this leftover yarn that was given to me after my grandma had passed away. And because I already knew how to crochet, I wanted to learn how to knit in order to sort of best make use of the yarn that was left over. I feel like for normal apparel that an adult is going to wear, I think knit looks a lot better than crochet. That's my humble onion. It's my humble onion. Any of the stuff that I've crocheted to wear, I don't wear it. Whereas with the stuff that I've knit so far, I do end up wearing it. All that to say, spoiler alert, I haven't really used any of my grandma's leftover yarn or any of like her straight needles. As a beginner knitter, I don't really understand the point of having straight needles. Haha. Pun. Today I thought that I would go through some of my finished items, discuss my little knitting journey with you guys, show off my failures as well as my works in progress. If this kind of video interests you, please like the video, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me. I would be really grateful, but otherwise, let's just go. I've written down my notes about all of my knitting down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at, okay? Before I get too far into this, I do have a question for more experienced knitters. I believe that the way that I hold my yarn and the way that I yarn over is considered continental knitting. But when I watch any other sort of knitting tutorial, even if someone is holding their yarn continental, their knitting ends up looking a lot different to mine. When I watch someone else knit, the way that they're entering the stitch, they're using their right needle to enter the stitch from the left hand side. Whenever I'm knitting, I find that I'm able to enter the stitch from the right because that's the direction that the stitch is open and it's not creating a twisted stitch. I think the fact that I learned how to crochet before I learned how to knit has influenced this style of yarning over because it is very similar to how I would yarn over when I'm doing crochet. But it does mean that all of my stitches look backwards when I look at other people's knitting, and it means that also whenever I'm needing to look up any tutorials, the direction that people are telling me to go doesn't sort of match up with the way that my knitting itself looks like. I have no problem with this. Like I said, I'm not creating any sort of twisted stitches. If you're a more experienced knitter, please let me know if this is a bad knitting habit that I should completely unlearn before it's too late. My first foray into knitting was early February this year when I started making the Roomy Raglan by Jules Efterfield. I had bought like these random skeins of yarn from Spotlight in their like value pack, the mill ends, just these random skeins that come in like 400-gram bag. If I had actually checked the pattern for the Roomy Raglan, I would have easily learned that 400 grams would not be enough to complete the sweater. But hey, we live and we learn. I also tried to make this using some leftover mohair from my grandma's old stash, but also there was not enough of the mohair to complete this sweater as well. I did get like a little bit further into completing this, but I soon realized that I did not have enough yarn for the actual sleeves. So I have started frogging this. The only thing is that because it uses 2 strands of yarn, the mohair and like I was using this yarn, I held it together. Because I only have one yarn winder, trying to unravel all of this is just really tedious, but I did really enjoy the process of like starting to knit this. And I think instead, once I have fully frogged this, I will just make this into like a t-shirt. I'll find a t-shirt pattern and use it instead as a t-shirt. The next project that I started after this was a halibut sweater. This feels like such a crazy escalation to go to after failing to complete a Roomy Raglan. This is a stranded colorwork top. It's knitted top down in the round. You make a circular yoke, you split for the sleeves, etc. The yarns that I use, the main color is 4 Seasons Montrose in the colorway Pine, and then the lighter color that I used for the fish is 4 Seasons Half and Half in the color Cream. The lighter color is a 50% acrylic and a 50% wool blend, and then the green here is a 90% wool, 7% acrylic, 3% viscose. If I knew what I knew now about like different fiber compositions, I would definitely remake this sweater using less blended yarns, I guess. I feel like I also got really lazy when I was making this. I wasn't properly counting each of my rows when it came to like the sleeves. I think my sleeves are like a little bit uneven between the two of them just because I wasn't counting properly, but I still really like this sweater. I love wearing it. I don't know, I really like it. I unintentionally made a cropped sweater because I was just too lazy to knit stockinette in the round for so long. So that's on me. That's on me. Sorry guys. When I was knitting that project as well, it did make me buy my own cheap set of interchangeable knitting needles just off of Amazon. It's a Canon event. You cannot interfere. I think it's a perfectly fine set as like a starter. It was decent. The only reason why I chose to purchase other needles to replace this sort of cheap set is because I ended up wearing off the coating of the 4mm needles. And without that coating, it meant that the yarn was gripping to the needle, and every time that I brushed the two needles against each other, they felt like that sort of nails on a chalkboard type feeling. It was really unpleasant to knit with them, so I did end up replacing them with a set of the Knit Pro Zing interchangeable needles. When I was bored of knitting stockinette for my Halibut sweater, I did try my hand at knitting the ever so trendy Sailor Slippers by Annie Sews. These have been all over everywhere. I've seen them all over TikTok. I've seen YouTube videos about them. Trying to make these slippers was a good lesson in recommended yarn and patience. The recommended yarn for the Sailor Slippers is Drops Snow. Now I could either order Drop Snow from a UK seller and it would be $4.50 per skein of yarn, and then wait up to 2 to 3 weeks for shipping and spend $20 additional for shipping. Or I could order from an Australian distributor where each skein of yarn would be $15 per ball, and then I would wait maybe a week or so before getting the yarn and spend like $9 on shipping. So I chose neither. I chose to go to Spotlight to try to find the next best thing. And when I was trying to find a replacement, I found myself looking at this. This is the Abbey Road Kiki Merino. I'm sure that if you've heard that name, you probably understand the problem that I had. I don't know if it's because the fact that it's merino yarn or if this yarn has just been treated as like a superwash yarn or something like that. But I could not figure out a way for this yarn to felt. If you are interested in making the Sailor Slippers, I would strongly recommend just getting the recommended yarn. If you're in Australia and you're trying to find an alternative yarn at Spotlight, maybe don't. Maybe just bite the bullet and buy the recommended yarn, because this Kiki Merino yarn would not work. I put these through my washing machine like 4 times. I put them in the washing machine with a towel in order to create friction. I put them in while they were in a laundry bag, like a mesh bag. I put them in while they weren't in a mesh bag, and nothing was helping them to like properly felt. I even tried the TikTok hack of putting these in your KitchenAid with a beater in order to have them felt, and all that I got was just a bent whisk attachment. Like, it did not work for me. No matter how hard I tried, these would just not become the felted slippers that I wanted them to be. The problem is that I had gone to Spotlight and I had bought so many different colors of yarn. I thought that like if this pattern works out and I'm able to create really cute slippers, that's an easy gift for like everyone in my life. So I bought all of these colors hoping that I would be able to make them slippers, and it didn't work. It just did not work. So because I now had a surplus of this Kiki Merino wool, I decided that I would try to make a jumper. Now, instead of just maybe using the same pattern for the Roomy Raglan, something that I've tried to make before and I liked the pattern of, I decided to go for just a free pattern that I found online. I made this using the pattern called Take It From the Top. It's by Bernat from the Yarnspirations website. This is a free pattern and it's described as a beginner friendly pattern, and it's also been written to accompany the Bernat branded yarn. The pattern itself, it doesn't use any sort of short row shaping, so the neck feels weird when I try wearing it. The raglan increases as well. They just say to make 1 stitch. It doesn't specify to make 1 left leaning, make 1 right leaning. It doesn't say anything. It just says make 1. I also couldn't really figure out like jogless stripes or anything like that, so there is a stark difference where I am changing the colors, especially on the sleeves and also on the back of this sweater. Thankfully, because I'm lazy, I haven't woven in any of the ends, so realistically I think I'm just going to frog all of this sweater. It was a cool experiment and it was like fun practice, but it's not like a wearable finished item. This is the Musselburgh hat by Tolsta Tee. I made this out of the leftover yarn that I had for my Halibut sweater. I find that this is a really good sort of beanie pattern. You just make 1 big oval shape that you fold in on itself, and that is basically your beanie. I can't fault it. I think it's a really well written pattern, and yeah, I highly recommend it. Moving on to something that I would consider to be like a failure, but I need to explain why I have a whole bunch of yarn. I bought a whole lot of yarn with the intent of making the Project Hail Mary fox sweater by Mary Maxim. I know that Mary Maxim was selling a kit for it, but I didn't like that all of the yarn was going to be acrylic. So I also didn't buy the pattern for it because I was convinced that I would be able to sort of freehand and draw up the charts for the color work myself, which I think is a little bit delusional, and I would not recommend doing that. The problem then that I encountered was that I wasn't able to find any yarn at Spotlight that sort of perfectly matched the gauge that I was seeing in any of the photos. I was wanting like these sort of specific colors in natural fibers with a chunky yarn, and I wasn't able to find it. So I thought the next best thing I would be able to do was to take pure wool entwine. So I got this in a white, a black, and a grey in the shade Putty. I wasn't able to find like a fox color in this yarn. Next best thing that I was able to find was this pure merino in the shade Golden Brown. So my thought was to hold two together with this yarn in order to make it chunky, and then when I knit it up, any of the color work that I was wanting to do, I wanted to do it in Intarsia. The problem is that this was my first time trying to do Intarsia. So trying to do Intarsia color work while holding two together, it just ended up being a total mess, and I gave up on it. I don't think I'm going to retry it unless I'm able to find specific chunky yarn. With that being said though, the fact that I bought a whole bunch of yarn in order to create a jacket, I had a bunch of this yarn left over. So with the white yarn that I had, I decided to make a Tolsta Tee. I believe with the Tolsta Tee, it's supposed to be a good summer shirt. It has a very airy gauge, so I think people tend to knit it with like cotton, linen, silk, those kind of fibers, either blends of that or anything like that to help keep them cool in the summer. I don't mind that I made my first Tolsta Tee out of this wool, just because right now in Australia it is winter, so I'm able to get a lot more wear out of it like immediately. I will say that with the yarn though, it is a little bit cheaper, so it is like a little bit prone to pilling, but that's nothing that I can't fight off with like a garment shaver. I also think that with the shirt, I screwed up my German short rows on the front, but it's not really something that I think other people are able to notice. It's only something that I'm able to notice. But now that I'm telling everyone, you guys will be able to notice as well. Guys, please don't mention it. That is pretty much it for my finished items. I do have a couple more things on my needles that I did show off while I was completing my crochet temperature blanket. I will quickly start with this. This was a second Musselburgh hat that I was making. The only thing is that I was using this merino yarn, and the more that I kind of look at it and the more that I kind of feel it as I'm knitting it up, I feel like this merino yarn is kind of going to waste if I'm just making it into a hat. So I think if anything, I'm probably going to frog this and make a start on a second Tolsta Tee in this sort of colorway, just so that I have something in merino compared to just plain wool, just to see, I guess, sort of how it feels on my body, whether or not it's going to be like really breezy or like suitable for summer. It could just be like a nice shirt to wear in spring. This guy, it's getting frogged because I don't want to waste merino yarn on a beanie. And I like the green beanie that I already made. This was a Sipu sweater that I was making out of the black and the grey that was left over. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. I do recommend it. I do like it. Completed all the color work and I've completed the short rows in the back. I just haven't done anything more on it so that I don't sort of lose place while I'm waiting to get more stock of the black yarn. And then finally, for what's on my needles, what is a work in progress, I have this. This is the Stella Tee. I've only just sort of completed the star motifs. I've done the short rows on the back and I'm just working in stockinette before I'm able to get down to the waist and bust shaping sections of the pattern. So I'm just kind of in the boring section where I'm trying to get at least like 6 centimeters between the armpit and further. So that's another thing that I'm working on, and that's all it. That is all of the knitting that I have tried so far this year, all of my pattern successes and all of my pattern failures. It's been really fun so far. Like I said, I'm a really beginner knitter, so if you have any tips and tricks that you'd like to share with me, I'm very open to them. I would be a sponge for everyone else's knowledge. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye!